Alright, this is probably going to be a short podcast, even though I've missed a little bit, but welcome to Golden Dome. I don't know why I went to say Fighter from 3. If at any points I just stop talking for a sec and kind of have a sec of spacing out, it's just I just got the vaccine shot earlier today and my left arm's bothering me a little bit, but other than that, everything should be kind of normal. And let's get into the college football talk. So first, something I haven't really talked about on the podcast. Horns down. Apparently now you can't really do it against Texas or you'll get called. But if they do it, they don't get called. You know, that makes complete sense to the refs, not to me. If somebody can make sense of that, can you comment? Because I have no idea how that works. Yeah, they can. Yeah, the home team it's based on can do it, but you can't. Can the crowd do it? Yeah. Can the team do it after the game? Yeah. Why can't they do it during the game if they can just do it after the game? Yeah, that defeats the whole purpose. And the purpose is probably so they can't do it to us during the game. They can do it to you after. What are you going to call it or call them for doing it after? You can't. Game's over. Yeah, there's no purpose to this thing. You can't tell me that there's very much purpose behind it, and I don't see why you're going to call it. I don't. And I think it's stupid. I mean, what if Notre Dame doesn't really do it? They don't have a signature thing they really do on field that you see very often. But let's say they did. If refs said, "Oh yeah, we will call other teams for doing it to you," but you can't, but you guys can do it to them, I would freak out because no, that's still backwards. Not backwards, but it's stupid. Either way. I don't care if it's against my team, for my team, whatever. It still doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. And this is something that's going to be funny to see players do it after the game, and they're like, "Oh, we can't do anything anymore, even though we want to." But whatever. It is what it is. I just wanted to take a second to laugh at that. And by a second, I mean almost 2 to 2.5 minutes. Alright, so Oklahoma and Texas are going to the SEC. The only one who voted against it was A&M, and that's because they get a recruiting poll because they were the only Texas team in the ACC or in the SEC. And what's the difference between going in Texas and A&M? Conference was mostly the big thing. Now, no. I don't think A&M would move ever, but if there was a time that I think there's potential for them to be purged out of that conference, it's now, even though I don't think they will. I'm just saying this is the biggest chance you have to pull them. Does that mean the chance is big? No, not at all. But still, this is probably the closest they will be for a while and closest they have been to leaving. And I kind of laugh at that. I kind of think it's funny. And actually, earlier this week, now, when this happened, I thought, well, okay, that's ACC may try to purge, or other conferences may try to purge one or two teams from that conference. And then it comes out, oh yeah, Pac-12, Big-12 may combined. If that's going to happen, that's going to knock ACC down a peg. That's going to knock, depending on how you think of conferences, down a peg. That'll put them to number 2 on the Power 5 in the Power 5 conferences. If that's going to happen, if I'm the ACC, I'm picking every single team I can from that may or may not be unhappy about a merger. I'm trying to pick any of those teams and say, hey, or try to convince them to come to the ACC, especially someone like a West Virginia. I'm not saying they're not going to be happy about a combination of both of those conferences, but They're one team that you'd think the ACC would try to go for and try to pull into the ACC. Or they could try to grab a smaller SEC team, which I don't think could work, but I always think is possible, like a Vanderbilt, because they've been near the bottom of that conference for a while. There's always the possibility they pull them into the ACC or somewhere so they can beat up on, like, Duke. And Syracuse until they get a good quarterback again. Hey, guys, don't spike on fourth down. If my cousin is a Syracuse fans watching right now, I'm sorry I had to make that joke, but as me talking progressed, that clicked and I had to say it. I'm sorry your quarterback did that. I'm sorry Culpepper did that. I do feel bad, although depending on how our future is, I may not. But hey, Syracuse could be decent this year. If Culpepper develops a little bit, though they did lose one or two guys in the draft, including a corner, or their number one corner. But hey, we just lost two corners, or two starting corners, or two starting receivers. Actually, a starting corner and safety corner hybrid. Our starting linebacker is somebody on our defensive line, one of our tight ends that kind of played 50-50 with the other. Dude. Syracuse ain't lost what we lost, but I still think they can be good. Notre Dame, I said they did get a hook a hook thrown out there by the ACC. They said, or their new commissioner basically said, "Oh, it'd be nice to have them here." Last year was just a kind of a taste of what they could do in the ACC. Dude, Notre Dame would steamroll the ACC. Besides Clemson and maybe Miami. But that depends on how they are with King right now. That depends on how he performs off that injury. He says he's 100%, but I don't know. And I don't know if they can ever get back to true the U status like they used to be when they were very good. It's possible, especially with saying, yeah, a lot of the taxes other states have we don't, and you get beaches all year. But yeah, Florida's half a beach, or half beaches, so. But I make that joke all the time. I don't know why, I just do. I had to make it there, but. And UNC could too, but I think I want to know if Howell's the big reason they're really up there, though. I want to know what they can do without him. Which is what I want to see. What can they do after this year? And they just lost their running back. That's another question, is can they rebound from losing a running back in last year's draft and then their star quarterback next year's draft? But hey, who knows? Who really knows, right? But man, dude, you really want Notre Dame to steamroll your conference year in and year out? We already play half your conference already, mostly. Do you really need us to move in full time? No. I don't want, and there's multiple reasons not to go to conferences for Notre Dame. One of them is obviously NBC money, and I know everyone's is gonna be thinking that before I brought that up was that NBC money. In that NBC contract. But not only that, I mean, Notre Dame's been a team that's been proud of their independence and has been able to pull prospects from all different states, even other countries, and they've been able to pull lots of fans. They've been able to keep a big image as an independent. Why would they give that up to recruit potentially through... I mean, yes, they could still nationally recruit and everything, but I think as an independent, that gives them more image than they do in a conference, especially for recruiting. And you just got Marcus Freeman in, who's done a great job so far with recruiting and getting guys to commit if they stay. Who knows? But as of right now, we've got 4 guys committed that are, or we've got multiple 4-star linebackers, defensive players, at least. Not linebackers. 4-star at least defensive players. I'm pretty sure that's around the number. And there's about 10 to 12 4-stars in this class right now that they've got coming up next year, or in the next class. Who's to say they don't lock a lot of those guys down, if not 99% of them, and bring in a top 15 recruiting class again, but get a little bit more help due to a new coordinator that's done really well with recruiting so far. They don't need a conference for image. They don't need a conference for recruiting. They don't. And that's where I think, even if they moved in the SEC, I don't necessarily know if they need that conference for recruiting. It all depends on how you view it, but still. I mean, they're already pulling guys from different corners of the country, even the globe. Do they really need to join a conference and kind of pipeline from mostly that region? No. But I was looking at this and I said, ACC is going to do another push after, or if it becomes official, a big group up for Notre Dame. They could even make a push for Army if they were very desperate, though I don't think Army would make the move. I still think it's possible for them to push for him. But other than that, there's really nobody else that's notable that's an independent. Sorry, Navy. Navy's just got to be a little bit better for me to notice that they're that. Well, no, Navy's conference, right? No, Navy's independent. I'm thinking of Air Force, who's conference. They're in a conference, but there's really nobody. What, BYU? They had one good year under Zach Wilson. Okay. Show me you can do it again, and maybe I'll start to think about BYU as somebody there. But if that merger is true, look for the ACC to try to start picking teams from the remains of those conferences if they don't want to join, or maybe even a low-profile SEC team like a Vanderbilt, who's not necessarily great in that conference year to year. They could pick them off too. Who knows? But on to the next. We've heard this all kind of ties in with stuff, anyways. People have even noted that Notre Dame could go to the Big-12. Are you kidding? You can't look me dead in the eyes, serious, and say Notre Dame could go to the Big-12. They've got a better connection with the ACC than they do anybody else. If they're going anywhere, it's probably ACC. And ACC's been pulling every year for years, and they're not gonna join up. So what makes you think they're gonna want to go to the Big-12? I'd argue, or you can argue, yeah, they're kind of, well, I'm not necessarily sure the region, but I know they're in that kind of portion of the U.S. Partially, at least. I think the ACC would work better. I do. But it is what it is. This whole merger thing supposedly could play out in many different ways. And honestly, I'm looking forward to seeing. I hope no Pac-12 Big-12 merger happens, but because that's going to create a super conference to compete with SEC, and it's probably not going to work. But you're trying to make a super conference, and if you do, who's to say other conferences don't combine? You have a big jumbled mess, and then stuff spirals out of control down the drain. Then you got to have the ACC area. Then you got to have the NCAA come in and fix the problem, and then you're gonna have. It's a big thing. It all depends on how everything pans out. Hopefully, there's no Big-12 Pac-12 merger, Big-12 Pac-12 merger, but whatever. It is what it is. We'll see what happens. But there's really hasn't been too much news. But at least there's been some. And I want to talk about this. Harbaugh. Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh came out and said that they're going to beat Ohio State or die trying. Now, I talked to a Michigan fan on this, and he said that it's a combo. If you got to beat Ohio State and who was it? Ohio State, Penn State, and if I think it was Ohio State, Penn State, and if you can't beat either, there's not too much job security there. But honestly, Michigan's a program this year that I don't think they have enough to beat Ohio State again, but I think they have enough to beat Penn State. I think they got more than enough. They're one of those programs that I'd put around 2 to 4 wins, maybe even 5. But I think they can definitely exceed expectations under the right circumstances. Not circumstances, but with the right things going on. And there's definitely a lot of potential there, and you'll never hear me say that about Michigan again. So if you're a Michigan fan, clip this and keep it, because it's the only time I'll ever say it. And I think they've got enough to do a little bit of work in that conference, but I don't think they have enough to beat Ohio State. Not yet. Unless Ohio State gets knocked down a peg, which please let it happen soon. And please send Alabama with them. That'd be great, because then that opens the spot up for somebody else to step up and the recruits to spread more evenly. That'd be nice. And it makes that we don't know every year who's going to compete in the national championship, Bama. And usually some school who does better than we expected. It could be Clemson, it could be Ohio State, it could be Georgia, depending on how you see it. It could be A&M, if they do well this year again. But I don't know if last year was an anomaly or not for them. But you could say that, well, I was going to say you could say the same thing about Coastal, but I don't think they get very far. Same with BYU, but Coastal, I think if they keep like a easier schedule compared to what a lot of other teams have, they could get themselves up there. But dude, they're not built enough to be. They're not a true top 25 team. They get in. They're not. Well, they are a true top 25 team, but they're not like other teams. They're not huge. They're not super great. But it is what it is. The ranking's there for a specific reason. We saw it happen to them in their bowl game, but hey, I'm rooting for Coastal Carolina fans right now. In Coastal Carolina, I want to see a up-and-coming FBS team. We haven't had one of those in a while. So hopefully they do something. I'd love to see it. But anyways, in other news, yeah, not a lot has really happened in Notre Dame news. Okay. So I quickly read into an article. Brian Kelly came out and kind of gave a rocky statement, and not a rocky statement in terms of like, I'm iffy about it. It's rocky on what he says and how it can be perceived. But here's what he says. He says, and this he was asked about it. How much longer could he be coaching? And he said, quote, I leave it open-ended. I feel good. I'm healthy. I enjoy what I do. I really like my position that we're in Notre Dame. My contract states that I'll be here to see your son graduate. So I guess when I get past that threshold, I'll have to come up with another answer. But right now, I think my stock answer is, as long as I'm feeling good and I'm healthy and I believe that my message resonates with our team, I'll keep coaching. And honestly, that's a good thing to hear because I get it. Everyone thinks, oh, Kelly can't get past that next level. He can't get to that next level. I think there's a mixture of things that some you can't put on him. Some you can, some you can't. And honestly, I like him as a coach. He's close to passing Rockney in wins. And you've got to admit, Brian Kelly's had a lot of success and a lot of consistency. Whereas previous coaches didn't do too hot. I mean, there hasn't been a great coach in a while. Going back the decade before he was hired, I'd say. I'm trying to think. I have a feeling I'm mixing up the order of who was in before him, but if I'm wrong, just tell me. Because I'm thinking it was two coaches that had down year, or didn't have great careers, and then Brian Kelly, who had consistency, but not only that, Notre Dame's had consistency recruiting with him here. And I like what he's got alongside him. I like Freeman as a coordinator too. I think they'll have success there. Reese, he's not very active in the scouting stuff, as far as I've seen. I don't necessarily. If I saw someone who did a little bit more of what Marcus Freeman does and brought in a little bit more in terms of recruiting value, I'd like that. But I still want to give Reese more of a chance. I want to see more of what he can do as a coach. He's only been in here for, a year? 2 years? A year. Since the previous offensive coordinator left, and his name is leaving me right now. Sorry that I can't think of his name. If you know, just drop it in the comments for me. Thank you. But honestly, I still hold some confidence with Reese, but hopefully Kelly, the rest of his coaching tenure, he can be very successful. Very successful. But anyways, this has been a good podcast. Glad to get one of these out again. I am Jordy Fighter, and I will see you guys next time. Probably not next week unless a lot of news drops, but by the second week of September, probably in the first week of September, I'll probably have another podcast up by then, because nothing's gonna happen for like another half a month, unless some big stuff happens, which I don't think it will. But anyways, I will see you guys next week. Well, probably not next week, but potentially next week.